Welcome to the Center in the City podcast. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and during this series, I'll be interviewing various thought leaders, wellness experts, and humans on how they practice sustainable self-care and mindfulness. We'll get real and raw, talk about the light and the shadow side of self-care and mindfulness, and how we can actually stay centered amid the chaos and the hustle and bustle of our modern day world. So settle in and get centered. This podcast episode is brought to you by Centered in the City, a virtual on-demand self-care and mindfulness platform with over 100 different meditations, journaling prompts, nourishing recipes, and Pilates flows, all designed to support you feeling calm, focused, and energized as you live your life in this modern day world. For more information, head on over to centeredinthecity.org and claim your 7-day free trial. Notice how much better you will feel by having a consistent practice to support you staying centered. I'm so excited to have Vadan Ritter with us on the Center in the City podcast today. Vadan and I know each other from our time at UCLA when we did our mindfulness facilitation training program. And she just has such a wealth of knowledge and experience when it comes to supporting people with chronic pain management and using mindfulness as well as other holistic modalities to support people on their healing journey. There's a lot of research and science that demonstrates the power of using mindfulness as a practice and a tool for people who are managing chronic pain. So I wanted to have Vadan to come on and explore and share her wisdom for anybody who is interested in learning more about mindfulness and how they can use these practices to support them living in their body with a little bit more ease. A little bit more about Vadan is that she is the lead facilitator and mindfulness instructor for the Integrative Pain Management Program in San Francisco. She began her exploration and training in meditation mindful movement around 40 years ago. She studied Tai Chi, yoga, Vipassana, Sufi meditation. She is also an awakening joy teacher. And in her public health work as a mindfulness teacher and licensed acupuncturist, she's able to work with underserved communities to make integrative holistic practices widely accessible. So settle in and enjoy listening. Vadan, welcome to the Center in the City podcast.
Thank you. Such an honor to be here with you.
I want to begin by asking, what does it mean for you to be centered?
That's a good one. I think Matthew Brensilver is one of my important influential teachers. And I think one of the things that he often talks about is just that mindfulness is really this path of integrity. It's really this path of connecting to and listening to the most important parts of ourselves. And so for me, I know it's maybe not 100% your question, but I think to me, it's the deeper piece of that makes the centering happen.
I love that. So that place of deep listening, when we can connect inwards, that's kind of what you're saying is like where the centering is formed.
Like training ourselves to listen deeply and training ourselves to kind of let go of the static that all of us have in our daily life situations.
Static. And what a great word to describe all of the noise and the pushes and pulls of life. So Vadan, you are in the pain management world, and I'm curious, like, how did you get introduced into this world of holistic healing and pain management?
Well, I'm a licensed acupuncturist, and I actually I was invited to work in the integrative pain management program because of my acupuncture degree, but but in the end, I ended up doing a lot more like therapeutic yoga and teaching mindfulness meditation, and now I facilitate groups. So I'm like the lead facilitator for some of the groups that we do. So that was my entree. And I always like to mention that I in the past I always found it a little bit reductive and limiting that Chinese medicine was only about pain management. But when I actually started to be faced with the urgency of people's life situations, it totally changed everything for me. It gave what I was doing with pain management a deep sense of purposefulness. It gave me a platform that let all of these different integrative, holistic practices that I do come together. Yeah, so. Yeah.
The video you sent me, and I'll send it, I'll post it in the show notes for everybody, talked about, they said a stat that kind of blew my mind, that chronic pain is more common than cancer, diabetes, and heart disease combined. And that is what typically floods our healthcare system, is people going to the doctor because of chronic pain. And I had no idea that chronic pain was something that faced the American population to that extent. Can you expand on that a little bit more and even just talk about like what chronic pain is?
Sure. I mean, I always like to go back to the history because I think up until the 1940s, chronic pain was not considered a diagnosis. It was just like, something you had to get through. And then when they started to medicalize it, it started to get a little bit out of balance. But I would say that I think this goes to the reason that some of the practices that we do are helpful. But our brain nervous system is highly neuroplastic. And so chronic pain happens when your body decides to kind of take a easy shortcut. You have your pattern, you have a instance of pain, and then your brain sort of patterns itself so that it's always kind of going to that as opposed to like actually responding to what's happening. But
so
but
the brain
anyway,
gets a little reactive.
Yeah. And like the I think the example that we always use in our program is that chronic pain is kind of like a snow, like a snowball rolling down a big hill. And so you start off with your actual pain impulse, and then you add the stories you make about the pain, and you add the thoughts you have about the pain, and you add the reactive emotions you have about the pain. And and there is this way that our nervous system gets hypersensitized around pain impulses. And so all of those things make the pain at the bottom of the hill, it's a giant snowball. But I feel like that's, I don't know, it's a very simple metaphor for chronic pain, but I always feel like it makes a lot of sense to me, and also justifies the reason that a lot of these integrative modalities work.
I love that visual. This program that you're working with is very holistic and unusual, and it's super holistic perspective that it takes. I'm curious to learn a little bit more how you integrate mindfulness into that and all the other modalities as well.
Yeah, well, I would just say that our program is based on a biopsychosocial model of chronic pain. And what that means is that social isolation is one of the biggest factors for increasing chronic pain. Our negative emotional state really bears on that. I think that the whole thing about the mindfulness, I do think it goes back to the snowball image, because mindfulness helps us subtract all of the different things that turn pain into suffering. So it, and this can go back to, some of the brain science, when we're activating the when we do mindfulness, we activate the prefrontal cortex, and that tends to mediate a lot of the more like the limbic brain, which is the part of us that's stuck in fear, that's stuck in projecting what bad thing is going to happen with our chronic pain, that's stuck in the stories that we're making about how, I always think that the biggest story we tell ourselves that makes chronic pain hard is, we tell ourselves the story like, this should not be happening to me. And I think that, and that's not something you really say to people on the first day that they come work with you, but it's really true. It's just like, we have to just be willing to show up for our experience as it is happening. And it's like, we need to access our resilience, and we cannot access our resilience if we're wishing things were different.
Oh my God, that is such wisdom right there, that we can't access our resiliency if we're constantly wishing things were different. So it's like, how do people, like, if, listeners are managing with chronic pain, how would you suggest they use mindfulness to support them meeting the moment?
Obviously, Jon Kabat-Zinn is an amazing pioneer in this field, and he's the whole reason why I'm able to do my work in the public health realm. But, I feel like one of the most important things that we can do around our chronic pain is to, develop self-compassion towards ourselves and our experience. And I like to front load that, because I feel like I work in a program that has a really big diversity of socioeconomic groups and education backgrounds, and also some people with drug use histories, and just it's all over the place. But I feel like the mindful self-compassion is really accessible to everybody, and I would start there. But mindfulness itself, it's a very simple practice. It's just bringing ourselves back to our present moment experience with openness, with self-compassion, with a willingness to be present with what shows up. So I think that, and I think there's really great teachers out there during the pandemic. It's amazing how many platforms are happening out there. One of my amazing teachers is James Barres, and he's starting a 6-week donation-based only program. But anyway, I just think I think it's good to find a teacher that you resonate with. I highly recommend Tara Brach. Tara Brach is amazing. She's really helped me teach to chronic pain and some of her practices. She has a lot of self-compassion. She has a lot of she doesn't articulate it, but she really does teach a trauma-informed style of meditation practice. And I should just mention that trauma-informed practice has a massive crossover with chronic pain. All of the techniques that you use in a trauma-informed practice work really well for someone that has a lot of chronic pain. So
will you highlight a little bit for people who don't know that, the difference of self-compassion practice versus just meditation, and then what more of a trauma-informed lens in a meditation practice looks like? Will you just highlight that for our listeners?
Sure. You can say too much about all these things, but I think with trauma-informed, what's really important is you cultivate a lot of choices. And I think that I noticed that a lot of people who think they cannot meditate only learned mindfulness with a focus on breathing. And with a trauma-informed approach, you you use your sense of listening. You might leave your eyes open. You might use your sense of feeling. You might, there's some really basic things where it's called pendulation, where you, like if your experience of pain is too intense, you find a neutral place to bring your attention, and then you move back and forth between them. And then, self-compassion, I feel like, I've really, there is a very specific lineage called mindful self-compassion, and Kristen Neff is the main proponent of that. And she has she's amazing, and I haven't gone as deeply into her specific practice. I've gone very deeply into Tara Brach's teaching, and it's not officially mindful self-compassion, but I think that she really evokes a lot of self-compassion in the work that she does, and her particular emphasis, or one of her big things, is the RAIN practice, which is a process of dealing with difficult emotions, and it means recognize, allow, investigate, nourish. It's all these things are hard to kind of go through in a quick, but no, let me say one really is like sort of essential, poignant thing about Kristen Neff's work. So when we have really intense pain, it usually shuts us down and makes us feel isolated. I think what Kristen Neff invites us to do is she invites us to use that place where we're suffering, where we're feeling pain. She invites us to use that as a way to connect with all of the people that experience that. And so, I don't know, there's something really beautiful and poignant about that. And it sounds simpler than it is, but if we just kind of flip our usual habitual thing of like, oh, this hurts so much, I'm just gonna like go into
it.
Yeah.
And it feel like I'm alone, shut down. Yeah. You just said a few things that I want to highlight, like such juicy things. Yes, Kristen Neff's work is amazing. And that place where we get to connect to all humanity, having experienced this sort of pain before, or that we're not alone, is a really powerful practice when I've experienced it, just to feel held, like, oh, I'm human. This is part of being human. And it kind of softens the heart. There's that sense of it's okay, right? The permission, also that sense of not alone, as you were mentioning earlier, how isolating we can be in our emotions or in our pain. And then I also want to, and Kristen Neff also she has a new book called Fierce Compassion, which is really great for people listening who, her first book that talked specifically on self-compassion, talked more about like tender compassion to ourselves. And this book on Fierce Compassion talks a little bit more how we can bring some kind of oomph energy, mama bear energy, as she calls it, into our lives. And then Vadan, you talked about Tara Brach, and I want to just give you a shout out because you actually introduced me to Tara's method of the RAIN practice, because the RAIN practice has been around for a while. I'm forgetting the original teacher who created RAIN.
Yeah, I forget. Diana Winston was referencing it in her summer workshop, and I was the first time I ever heard who the original
she was. Doesn't get much credit for it, and I'm now like blanking on this teacher, but she is out there. And Tara Brach was influenced by that work and changed the N from non-identifying to nurture. And you really brought that into our group during our trainings together, and I really loved learning about that. And that piece of just nurturing, like asking ourselves, how can we nurture ourselves, is so powerful.
It is. Yeah.
You also mentioned something earlier about being alone in our pain. And before we hit record, we were highlighting this about how the kind of modern world of well-being is very individualized focused when we're talking about healing or feeling our best, versus taking more of a holistic community approach to it. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that and the power that you see and witness in your work when you do healing work in community?
Yeah, well, I did a sort of a 90-minute presentation for, for our graduate group, UCLA graduate group. One of the things that I noticed the more I talk about the program that I'm working in is that it's very, it really goes against our typical Western notion of what healing is and what health is. And just as an example, I'm really committed to doing this work, and I looked around to see, if I could work in other pain management programs, and it's all completely separated. You kind of have you go to your doctor and they diagnose your pain and maybe they give you some drugs, and then maybe you go to a therapist and they talk you through things, and then maybe you go to your acupuncturist, but it's all very, very separate. And so our program is very, very multimodal. It's very, very, it's really centered around the group experience. So, people, this is, we've been doing it on Zoom since the pandemic, but just a sort of our model is that people show up a little after noon and everyone has some sandwiches and we kind of chat and then we have our program, and our program always starts off with mindfulness, and usually like 10 minutes of mindfulness, and then we have a sort of a group process where people share what their experiences have been this week with pain, and then we do some movement, some Tai Chi or Qigong, and then we have a presentation of the day, and then people hang around and they get acupuncture, they get massage, I do yoga with people after the group breaks up. So it's very relational. The relational part is very important, and even I feel like that intention even carries over to the way that the staff work together, because we really collaborate in our creating our programs, and we always check in with each other after a meeting just to be like, how did it go? How's this person doing? What can we do? But we used to focus more on what we can do better, but we've been doing it a while, so there's less of that talk but each group is so different, right? Each groups have very different personalities, and one group was really sort of extrovert and funny, and then other groups are just very quiet and the opposite. And so anyway, so it's but I guess the more key point is that we see the healing process as being integrative, and as being very strongly connected with the relationships that people form by having this be partly a support group. So
that's so interesting. You talk about the program being based on bio, psychological, social model. Mm-hmm. And so it really, the relational P you're noticing is super huge. And then you talked a little bit earlier about, the snowballing effect of people understanding their thoughts and emotions and the stories that they're contributing to the pain. And then obviously the bio aspect of it being the muscle impact or a tweak or something fractured or whatever's happening inside the physical body. And so right now, as we're navigating the pandemic and people are feeling really isolated, it's beautiful to hear that there's still community and this ability to find that relational aspect of this program, and that you're able to serve people still virtually. Where, what would you suggest to maybe somebody who's just beginning their chronic pain journey? Where would they just begin?
The work that we do happens through the Public Health Department of San Francisco. The Integrative Pain Management Program, we do have a website that our intention in this program is to be a model. so that other groups can start their own programs. We've been part of several studies, and they've published articles about us in scientific journals and things like that. I don't want to be discouraging. Because I was looking around trying to find more of this kind of work. I haven't found as so many organizations that are doing things in the way that we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I would look for, though. I would look for a group that has integrative medicine as part of it. I would look for a group that does have a support group component to it, because this is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I think mindfulness is huge. I mean, it's really, I started off in our program. We had a Zen priest who was doing the mindfulness teaching when I first got there, and I was doing the yoga and the Qigong. And I mean, I saw how people practicing mindfulness, it changed their reality. So I love mindfulness and I love meditating, but I mean, I just saw firsthand that it really made a huge difference. And this is partly why I'm pretty passionate about teaching it, because I feel like it works,
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's science, the science is catching up to the things that you and I and others have felt and experienced through our meditation and mindfulness practices of like, there's something in this shit, this is magical. Yeah. So like, okay, people can look for holistic programs. It's hard to find, but I'm really hearing they could start with some mindfulness practices. You had mentioned self-compassion practices earlier as well. And this ability to just meet yourself where you are in the moment and kind of drop the shoulds, drop the stories. I'm kind of hearing you suggest for people.
Yeah. And I mean, for example, Tara Brach has an immense amount of free content on YouTube, and like she's a great resource for that. Yeah. So that would be an easy place to start. I found it's a little bit of a tangent, but I was studying to be an awakening joy teacher when I was first doing this work. And it's a name of something, but basically it's a combination of mindfulness and the study of happiness. Mm-hmm. And a lot of this knowledge about how we rewire our brains for happiness, how kind of like a lot of practical cues about accessing our neuroplasticity. So I love that work, and I think that would be really helpful for people that were dealing with chronic pain. Rick Hansen is the sort of the neuropsychology, mindfulness teacher who has some really specific information about this kind of thing too. He's a little nerdy, but I learned a lot from him, through other teachers, and now I enjoy going to him as well. But
and as you mentioned earlier, Jon Kabat-Zinn's book, Full Catastrophe Living, is a great resource too. People can check out and start to learn more. Vadan, thank you so much for being here and sharing your passion and your insights with us, and all the work that you do for so many people, helping heal and empower them and connect them to each other. Where can people learn more about you if they want to reach out and stay connected?
Yeah, so I have a website, vadanhealingarts.com, plural. And also just people can reach me on my email address as well, vadanhealingarts@yahoo.com. So
beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Wade. No, it's really such a joy to get to talk about this with you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Centered in the City podcast. Know somebody in your life that is managing chronic pain. Send them this episode and share the love. And until next time, stay centered.